specifically with your DODEA grants. If ever there is anything that you need outside of your community of practice, or you're looking for more opportunities to build your capacity, please reach out to Dr. Bercutis. Please reach out to Nancy. They have been with us for a very long time. They know the ins and outs of our program, but also too, they are grant professionals and have worked in other capacities with other federal organizations and grant work. And so they may have some expertise to share with you about how you can build your capacity as grant professionals as well. If either one of those women win the lottery and leave us, you can always feel free to contact Christy and I or Dr. Jen directly as well, and we will be more than happy to assist you in any of your needs. Next slide. Alrighty. So today, Christy and I are going to tag team this briefing, and we're going to talk to you about three important things. We're going to, of course, talk about the FY24 announcement that is available now for you to apply for. We'll also give you a few grant program reminders and updates, and my favorite segment, posturing for patients. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means in our ask of you and what you can expect from us over the next few months. Alrighty, so let's just start out with some reminders. At the top of your screen, you see the monitoring and compliance tools that we use here in our office. We ask you to lean into those monitoring review plan check-ins as a time to really thought partner with Dr. Jan Christie or myself about your grant goals. If you have any strategies that you need to pivot, we're here to assist you. Our primary job, in addition to executing funding in compliance with the 2 CFR 200, is really to serve as thought partners with you. We really do want you to succeed in grant implementation. So our monitoring review check-ins are a great time to talk with us about that. We also have webinars available on our website. Some of you are in your planning year for your FY23 awards. I would highly encourage you, if you haven't already, look at that planning year webinar. It talks a lot about your planning your report. And Chrissy does a great job of kind of pulling out different reports for you to speak with your evaluator about for possible implementation or for use in your report. So there are plenty more webinars there for you to explore. So we just like to remind folks that they are there for you to use, as well as us being available for technical assistance, as well as emailing our e-tech if you have any problems with our website or just have any general questions. For those of you that were lucky enough to get what I'm referring to as COVID grants, our FY19 cohort, you will be closing out. I want to thank you for your diligence, your grit, and your resilience during the time period of COVID. Your grants were hit pretty hard if you were the recipient of an FY19 grant. And so we look forward to learning from you and reading your closeout reports for that grant, which is due September the 30th of this year. I would highly encourage folks, however, not to wait until September the 30th to submit your closeout report. If you have your data available, work with your evaluator to get that taken care of as early as possible, as well as working with your finance and business office to get those final invoices submitted on time, which is the last date of your period of performance, which is May 31st of 2024. As most of you know, and if you don't, I'll tell you that your last invoice can be an advance payment. We just need the invoice submitted by the last active date of your grant, which is May 31st. and your final SF425, which is your final closeout financial report, is due by September 30th. Also, keep in mind to retain all of your records for audit purposes for the next 3 years. How fun! So make sure that if you plan to leave the district or move in some other capacity, that the district has a way of retaining those records for the next 3 years. If you have any questions whatsoever about closing out, I know that many folks were inherited an FY19 grant. They may have not been the original project director on that grant, and you see a concerning amount of funding left on your grant, or you've had to change strategies and you didn't inform DoD of that. Please make sure to contact one of us because FY19 folks are not on a monitoring plan. That is a new requirement within the last couple of years. And so if you need some technical assistance in that area, please reach out to us. The sooner, the better, because May 31st will be here. Um, Quicker than you think. And then we also want to just make sure that people are using the resources that are available to them, which is the three resources of financial as well as performance and our COP that we just had in Savannah. All of those resources are located under the resources tab on our DoDEA grants website, as well as if you don't know how to find the 2 CFR 200, please make sure that you take note of that ecfr.gov website. The 2 CFR 200 really is your friend. Before you even ask DoDEA, you should probably look to see, can I purchase food with my grant funds? What does the 2 CFR 200 say about that? Before JDP has to tell you no, because it does not bring me joy to tell anyone no. So make sure you just know where to find that reference document, as well as the resources that are free to you provided by the Penn State Clearinghouse. I will pause there. Does anyone have any questions about any reminders that I talked about thus far? All right, that is great. We're going to move right along. Posturing for patience. Let's just go ahead and get the burning fires out the way. While we have an application open and eagerly anticipate reading your submissions, we are very transparent in our office. And it is in the spirit of transparency that we want to share with you all as great Americans that we are currently operating under a continuing resolution. What that means is that our U.S. Congress has not passed a budget for fiscal year 2024. I am still hopeful that Christy I and Dr. Jim will have jobs after Friday, but the fact of the matter remains is that there's a continuing resolution and it expires on March the 2nd. And with that being said, we are currently operating under the FY23 levels, and we are quite unknown as to what our budget will look like for our grant program when it comes to the MCAS funding piece of our program for this year. This is not a new situation. This has occurred in the past. But we like for folks to know that we don't know what our funding levels are. What's not new is that we usually never know. It's a surprise to all of us. And that's okay. We continue to press and we are always ready when funding does hit our bank accounts. Why I want to share this with you is that a lot of our funding for our MCAS piece of our program office comes from the internal DODEA budget. We have an authority from Congress to execute MCAS grants, but it is an unfunded authority. So what that means is that the DODEA budget really determines what our grant funding will be for MCAS for a particular fiscal year. This year, DODEA has several high dollar initiatives that they are anticipating implementing for the DODEA school district, as well as all federal employees received a sizable pay increase this year. However, That pay increase did not come under a new fiscal year budget. So federal agencies are having to figure out how that pay increase will um, will be taken care of with FY23 funding levels. I share all this with you to say that we don't know how many grants we will be awarding. We do not know what our budget is. We are hopeful. Hope is a strategy, a coping strategy that we use often in our office. And therefore, we are hopeful that this will be a great funding year as last year was. We did not anticipate receiving over $70 million worth of funding. That is, in the words of our director, unprecedented. It has not occurred since we actually had a line item in the National Defense Authorization Act back in 2011. However, that occurred because we got a lot of help from the Army Corps of Engineers, and we got some friends and some other DoD agencies that were gracious enough to provide us for the funding for our grant program. I don't know if that's going to occur this year. What I will tell you is that our strategy currently is very similar to what our strategy was back in fiscal year 18 and 19. Many of you had 18 and 19 grants. So if you apply for a grant in fiscal year 18 and you received a grant in fiscal 18, that was great. But you were one of the lucky 21 folks that received grants. However, we had over 60 applications. So what we did for our fiscal year 19 grant year was we went back to the fiscal year 18 list, and we were able to award those most deserving grantees, which basically almost exalted the list, except for a couple of folks in fiscal year 19. That's why in 18, if you got a grant, you didn't get a grant in 19. And in 19, if you got a grant, you didn't get a grant in 18. So we may be looking at one of those strategies if our funding levels are not accurate, are not adequate for the submissions that we receive. So what I will share with you is that if you are on the fence, if you need Christy or I to speak with your leadership about highly suggesting, and look, I just threw Christy out there, but I will be more than willing to talk with whomever about encouraging your application this year. I think what we provide is a worthwhile effort, and I would encourage anyone that may be thinking about applying to do so. Yes, Dr. Barcutis.
JDP, thank you so much for that.
Yes, ma'am.
You didn't mention the world language grant.
I did not. And that is intentional. And I'm glad you brought that up. That was intentional because everything that I just mentioned about funding is specifically for MCAS. World language is a part of the 2020 NDAA that did come with a line item for funding. So we will have funding for world language. At this point, I can't tell you how much funding. I don't want to be speculative because the funding line item supports not only our grant program, but also DODEA as a school district. And so I do know that DODEA as a school district has some initiatives around world language that they would like to implement within the fiscal year 2024-25 school year. What that amount is, I do not know to date, but I do know that we will be awarding some world language grants. Along with that, and I'm glad, Dr. Bucutis, did you have another point of order for that? Okay. Along with that, I do want to share this. We all know that the period of performance for any DODEA grant um, starts on September the 30th because it's the end of the fiscal year. With that being said, you may hear, we are well versed on how the grapevine works. You may hear that some folks may be awarded DODEA grants earlier than that start of September 30th. And those folks are probably going to be our world language folks because we know that funding we can execute. And with our limited manpower, while the terrific trio is terrific, we are not superhuman. So we try to award as early as possible so we can allocate our manpower and bandwidth to those that may be applying for MCAS, which we know will be awarded later in the fiscal year. So just wanted to posture everyone for that because we know, you hear one person is awarded and you think that we have exhausted all of our funding, and that's just not the case. So we ask that you are patient with us throughout the summer if your district is thinking about applying for an MCAS grant. Any other questions about the CR? All righty. In Savannah, if you attended our COP in Savannah, the last briefing that I held talked about changes, upcoming changes to the Title II Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200. And it talked about significant changes when it came to the threshold of specific cost allocations. Supplies moving to $10,000, equipment more than $10,000, single audit act threshold increasing, etc. The 2 CFR 200 is still, and quite like our continuing resolution, it is still being revised. And as such, we did not want to hold up our application process waiting for that law to be changed. As a result, it is quite possible that the 2 CFR 200 will be revised before we award grants. If that occurs, you will receive a technical assistance call from our office if you are a candidate for award for this fiscal year. It is at that time during that call that we will have the conversation about if any substantial changes will need to be made to your grant application in order for award and to be in compliance with the changes with the 2 CFR 200. So right now, everything is status quo until we receive notification that the law has been revised. So we just want to make sure that people were aware of that. The good thing is that we've already talked about it. So if your district, for example, is thinking about purchasing equipment, if funded, or proposing to purchase equipment, just know that currently, if it is more than $5,000 per unit item, it will be categorized as equipment right now. However, if the law is passed next week and you apply, just know that your detailed budget then will be changing from moving that equipment into the supply category. So just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that change. One of the big reasons why I cannot attend Key West, and you guys will be having great fun, and Ellie and her staff will be showing you all the wonderful things that are happening at 6B Charter, is because I will be here working with our contractor to transition our ETech, our Evaluation and Technical Assistance Center. We currently, this is a contract year for us to either have a new ETAC or have a new or to have the incumbent remain on the contract. However, the contract has significantly changed. As such, whomever the contractor is, we will need to work out some transitioning issues from the old contract to the new contract. This should be as seamless as possible to grantees. Again, it is our hope that it is a seamless transition from contractor, or the incumbent can make a seamless transition into a new contract. With that being said, there may be periods of time where the website may be down. Again, we're hopeful that it's not, but there may be periods of time where the ETAC website is not accessible. If that is the case, we will ask you to lean in heavily to Dr. Bercutis and into Nancy, because I do think that we do a great job of keeping our region leads informed of what's going on, and to lean into them for support if for some reason you cannot get a hold of one of our team members or anyone into the ETech. along with that transition, we may be sending out lots of emails. Particularly, we know spring reporting is coming. We're transitioning. We have an active grant competition where we will be going into merit review with either a new contractor or the incumbent with some significant changes. We're going to be very busy. And so with that, we will be sending out emails to keep you guys abreast with some high level information. And we just ask that particularly during the summer where we know folks may not be around, that you have some type of way to check into your email to make sure that you are aware of what's happening in our program office. So we just ask that for the next couple of months that you are patient and that you offer us grace while we are working on some major programmatic changes when it comes to our ETAC, specifically with merit reviews, with the website, and that kind of thing. Does anyone have any questions about this slide? Because I know that was a lot. Go ahead,
Mm.
Christy.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one thing. Those of you that have 19s in particular,
Oh, yeah.
please review your budget like this week. And if
Mhm.
you need to put in a budget change request, make that happen sooner than later, because how many days does JDP have to review budget change requests?
More than three, I'll tell you that. Oh, sorry. Sorry, you weren't asking me.
Yeah, so she has 30. She has
Thank
30
you.
days. So if you think about 30 days closer to May 31st, that gets uncomfortably close. So those of you with 19s, please review your budget to find out if you need to do a budget change revision and try to get that in early March so you're postured for success.
That's right, Chrissy. And along with that, if you are, we want you to be intentional about the grant funding you have remaining as well. eh, you don't need to go out and buy the stuff and things if it is not relevant to sustaining or growing your projects. Again, lean into Nancy, lean into Dr. Bercutis. They have experience in what grant funding can and cannot be used for, and can maybe work with you to think about, to thought partner ways in which you can use the remaining of your funding, as Christy said, to set you up for success. Thanks so much for that. And for those of you that have more than 25% of the funding remaining on your 19, you'll be getting a special call or communication from our grant program office to offer our very specialized assistance to help you close that out. All righty, I don't see any more hands, so we'll go to the next slide. Alrighty. The purpose of why we're really here is to talk about the FY24 announcement. Most of what you will hear for the remainder of our time speaking will also be on our pre recorded webinar. So if you didn't catch something, you can definitely stop us now because this is not pre recorded, this is live. So you got a chance to ask questions while you have all three of us, which a lot of people are jealous of because most people don't get all three of us. So well, you got all three of us. You got time to ask us questions. The announcement is open on grants.gov. I want to start by saying we DODEA isn't are not the owners of grants.gov. Therefore, if you have login issues, you're going to have to click that help button at the top of the grants.gov page to assist you in your access issues. March 29th, Good Friday, no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when the applications are due. Please make sure, I would highly recommend submitting prior to March 29th to ensure successful submission, to ensure that you have a copy of your submission report. I just think perhaps waiting to the last minute is not advantageous. We cannot accept them via email unless I say we can't accept it via email, and then last year we could because grants.gov went down. But unless we do not anticipate grants.gov going down, so we cannot accept your applications any other way but through that secure website. So please make sure that you submit your applications in a timely fashion. And again, all awards would be made no later than no later than or on September the 30th, 2024. Alrighty. At the top of the screen, you guys see page numbers. The page numbers, and I neglected to say this in the last slide, but the page numbers actually indicate what page you can find the information that we are providing to you today in the BRA agency announcement. So if you've been on grants.gov, you click the related tabs button, and there you will see an instructions folder, and herein lies the broad agency announcement. Those are the page numbers that this information corresponds to. Specifically, you guys are very familiar with this. This is our funding formula for our FY24 grant program. It is the exact same as last year's funding formula. Please make sure to look at page 10 of the announcement, which talks about our definition of a military connected student. It is that definition that you should use in order to find the number of military connected students at your eligible schools. Alrighty, are there any questions about the funding formula? Okay, great. This is the eligibility requirements. Again, same as last year as well. The eligibility requirement is a by school requirement. So you must have at least 10% or more military connected student enrollment for that school for the previous school year. The school district applies on behalf of the eligible schools, whether you are applying for MCAS or the world language. If you are applying for the world language, in addition to the 10% at each school, your LEA must also have or have a pending application to host a JROTC unit at one of the local high schools. The local high school does not have to be one of your target schools for application. However, you must have a JROTC that resides in your district for world language program eligibility. Are there any questions about eligibility? All righty. And then is this mine, Chrissy, or is this yours? This is mine too. Okay. I feel like people maybe by the faces, they may be tired of JDP by now, but I'll press. So, in addition to the required forms, and let me say that again, in addition to the required forms, a project narrative is how we merit review your grant application. However, we can't accept your application if you don't have the actual application for federal assistance, which is the standard form 424. So please make sure that you have not only a project narrative and a detailed budget, but you've also submitted your standard form 424, your standard form 424A. Make sure that all of your certifications and representations on SANS.gov have been accepted, which includes your standard form 424B, which is grants for non-construction programs. What we're going to spend most of our time talking about for the remainder of the time, however, is the project narrative, because that is what is merit review. This page that you can find on page 13 of the announcement kind of tells you the parameters around the project narrative and what is needed. Please note in blue that your project narrative should not exceed 30 pages. I will let you know that JDP, after 30 pages, she doesn't even send past 30 pages, she doesn't even send it to be merit review. There have been times where folks' applications have been cut off at page 30. So please make sure that your project narrative does not exceed 30 pages. Those 30 pages do not include your appendices. So with your appendices and your project narrative, you can have up to 60 pages, which means you can have 30 pages of appendices, which we appreciate because most of the time in the appendix is where we will find your quotes for the equipment that you want to purchase. We love that. That makes our business office very happy, our procurement division very, very happy when they do their business clearance to make sure that you are not asking for anything unreasonable. However, it is very, very important that your narrative is not more than 30 pages. There on the slide as well, you will find all of the components that are necessary for your project narrative. You can also find Appendix E in the instructions. And Appendix E basically is the rubric that gives you the criteria for each one of those sections. It tells you actually how many points. I want to pause and offer Christy Pitt some recognition for her hard work in Appendix E to really try to make it clear and concise to grantees what the expectations are for each section. So there you have kind of the sections and components of the project narrative that should be attached to your standard forms, your required standard forms for application. Next slide.
All right, now
So
I think,
I'm handing it over to Christy.
yep,
That's
all
right.
right.
To talk
Perfect.
about important things, very, very important things in our project narrative.
All right, thanks, JDP. So many of you have noticed that we do have a different requirement this year, and that is the logic model. The logic model does replace the planning year template and the implementation years template. So those two things are not required any longer. They have been replaced by a logic model. That logic model should align to your implementation years. Okay, if you are not familiar with logic models, there's this wonderful thing called Google that you can search up all kinds of references for logic models. And then also in the announcement, so this piece starts on page 32. We have a template that you could use. It's very detailed, very heavy. Logic models don't have to be this detailed and this heavy. And in fact, on page 32 of the announcement, we show that this is an acceptable form. So are two other samples that we'll look at in just a minute. And we will accept an implementation years logic model in any concise format the applicant prefers. We expect a wide variance of logic models to be submitted with the fiscal year 24 applications. We don't want to prescribe what it has to look like because logic models should differ based on what the grant proposal is all about. For instance, even if you have world language bumped up against an MCASP, the purpose of the grants are going to be different. And so therefore the logic model may need to look different as well. And we want to give you the flexibility to produce a logic model that is going to serve you well throughout the life of the grant. Okay. So I'm going to show you what also is included in the BAA. On page 33 of the BAA, this is a logic model. I don't expect you to be able to read this right now. You can look at it on page 33 of the announcement. This is an example of a logic model that is in the form of a table. Okay, or a chart. It starts with the inputs and works its way over towards the long-term outcomes. Typically, when you're building a logic model, you start with those long-term outcomes and you work backwards. So those of you that are used to beginning with the end in mind, or working from back to front, that is something that will serve you well when you are working on your logic model. Also, if you've got evaluators, if you've got data analysts in your district, a lot of times those folks are very skilled in logic models as well. So tap into your resources. You've got folks in your community who know very well what a logic model could be and should be. So definitely use your resources right around you. So this example is included as an example, not an exemplar, just an example. This is another one that is more in the style of a flow chart. This one's on page 34 of the announcement. And again, it's got the inputs all the way to the long-term outcomes. And if you start at the long-term outcomes and work your way backwards, you'll see how everything is really aligned and concise. This is the grant in a nutshell. That's what your logic model should be. If you were to hand someone your hopefully close to 1-page logic model, they would be able to understand what's going to be happening in your grant across 5 years, not with the granular detail, but with the overall idea of what's going to be happening. Okay. I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions on logic model. Yes, Nancy.
So 2 questions. I noticed there's a lack of detail in
Yes.
this, and that's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And
And
because
then
the narrative will support the
the
details.
detail. Okay. And the other question I have is, in the other charts that we used to do, there was a place for references / evidence. And again, is that to be in the narrative part?
That can be included in the narrative, or it can be included as an appendix. If it's included as an appendix, it likely will not be submitted to the merit review process.
Okay, very good.
And it looks like I have frozen. I don't know.
You did, but you're talking,
Well,
so
we
that's
can
good.
hear you.
We can
here,
hear
I
you.
got
Yeah,
caught
there,
up
you're
in
back.
myself.
I like that.
Sorry. We're good now. Okay. I had a moment. Now I get a message that my internet connection is unstable. I am unstable, evidently.
It's okay. I'm hopeful that it won't go out. Chrissy, do you want to make mention about the logic model being included? Because that being included in the
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So we will go here where you see project implementation years. If you look in the BAA, starting on page 46, that's Appendix E, you'll see where the logic model is included as part of the scoring criteria. And that is something that it is just mentioned there. It is not going to be scored in a critiquing way. It's going to be, is it present and does it align with the efforts of the grant? Okay, so it does not carry a massive amount of points. It's embedded, I believe, with those 15 points that are there around the project implementation years. The narrative around the project implementation years will carry the bulk of the weight. Then also the logic model is embedded in there as well. It does not divide out evenly. That hurt my heart a little bit, but it will be okay. So.
Also, too, around that, please ensure that the logic model, whatever graphic, flow chart, whatever format, if you plan to use the logic model template that we have in the announcement, please make sure that it is in your project narrative, not referred to as an appendix. Please make sure that it is included in your narrative. And as Christy so lovely put, that it is concise. We don't need a 4-page flow chart logic model. A 1 landscape page logic model would be sufficient. We do realize that most of you will not have an evaluator at the time until you are awarded, and therefore we do anticipate even changes to your logic model once your grant is in its planning year, and that's okay. But just wanted to make sure that we made mention to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you were to extract the logic model and the evaluation plan, you should be able to tell that both of those things are from the same grant. They should align very closely. So that's another good indicator. If you have a, I don't know, we call them tiger teams. If you have a team of people that kind of look for weaknesses in a proposal, if you were to hand them only the logic model and the evaluation plan, what holes do they see? That might be an exercise you might want to do internally within enough time to make any revisions that come out of that type of meeting. So yeah, don't work in isolation on this. Pull in other stakeholders that make sense within your district, within your communities. And then you get some different lenses applied and it just strengthens the application overall. All right, and then one more piece. This one we just included, this is where the logic model is. And if you look, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now 6 for this one out of a possible 15 points. So 6 does not divide evenly into 15. So we will be working with the merit reviewers to parse that piece out. But logic model is right here. Logic model clearly links the critical aspects of the grant with desired changes. So that is how the logic model will work into the scoring. It is, as I mentioned earlier, embedded in the project implementation years. You see there's some blue writing there around professional learning. There is nothing intentional about that. It got left over from a comment. So just know that, you know, if you like Carolina Tar Heels, you're celebrated on this slide. Congratulations. So All right, JDP, I think I am handing it back over to you now.
All righty. Thanks so much, Christy. So, some more reminders. Please make sure that your district, if you are applying for this opportunity, that your district has an active system for award management account and an active unique entity identifier number before even applying. Yes, ma'am. Nancy, I'm sorry. Just saw your hand.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I had
That's
something in the
okay.
Q&A just to go back.
Mhm.
So just with the implementation years versus the planning year, there is no flow chart for the logic model for the planning year, correct?
That
It
is
is
correct.
just for the implementation year. Okay, just double checking.
That is
Thank
correct.
you. Sorry. Continue.
No, that was a great question. I think this year we do anticipate quite a few questions, and this is new. We had folks completing two different templates. Now we're asking you to consolidate to one logic model. So no, that's a great question. One logic model, no, just one for implementation years. Make sure your SAM account, whomever holds that active registration in your office, please make sure that it is renewed and it is active upon application. I do not foresee us having the ability this year to really work with the districts to make sure that they have an active SAMs prior to award. I anticipate this being quick turns when it comes to awarding this year, and we just will not have the time. So please make sure that your grant is not kind of looked over because your SAM account or your unique entity identifier, which it used to be DUNS, is not active. Make sure that
JDP, can I
yes, ma'am,
interrupt for just a second?
absolutely.
Let's
Absolutely.
say that I am fairly
Uh-oh.
new to my position in the district and I'm not sure who would know if my SAM account and UEI are updated. Is that somebody in my business office I would seek out?
That's a great question. You should seek out your business office person. It varies at every school district. I will tell you that at some school districts, the superintendent secretary holds the SAM account. At other school districts and at most, it is someone in the business office because it must be an authorizing official that signs off on the certifications and representations. So if you don't know who holds your SAM account, I would start with who is doing your invoicing currently, because that person definitely will know, because you can't even receive payment for reimbursement if you do not have an active SAM account. So you want to make sure that that is taken care of, particularly in the summertime. Most school districts do their fiscal years by the end of June, and so you just want to make sure that is taken care of. Thanks, Christy. Make sure you read the complete announcement. While we've given you kind of a brief overview of everything that is in the announcement, please make sure to read the announcement. And we also invite you to view the pre-recorded technical assistance webinar that will be on our dodeagrants.org homepage on Thursday. Christy talked a little bit about tiger teams, and going back to that, here recently we've had some school districts that, funny enough, folks don't talk to each other, and one person wants to submit a STEM grant and one person wants to submit a world language grant. We suggest that all in your school district kind of come on one accord to determine what is most needed or what's most pressing for your district and what you would like to submit for. There will be, and we know there will be times where we'll receive several applications from one school district. I will tell you the way that that will be handled this year is the first application we receive will be the one that we will be merit reviewing. So please only submit one application per school district. Again, and please make a choice. It can either be MCAS or a world language, but it cannot be a combination of them both. All righty. Also wanted to make an important announcement about partnership. Dodea does not endorse any specific vendor. I think this is important because in our COPs, we do have sessions that provide promising practices, and we do have sessions where folks tell you what's going on in their district and what has worked. That's because that's a promising practice for them that we feel like may be great for other school districts to duplicate if it makes sense for them. That does not mean that we are saying these are the people that you need to work with in order to get a DODEA grant, or this is the organization that you must work with in order to be funded for award. It's absolutely false. We encourage school districts. We actually encourage you to use folks that are local to your community, that know your school culture, or that will provide the best service for you. What your needs are in the Southeast may vary differently than what folks' needs may be in South Central Texas. And so we don't want you to feel like we support or we advocate for one specific person, vendor, program, or organization. We do not. We want you to use the best organization or vendors and develop partnerships with those who will help you implement your grant goals and strategies. And last but not least, optional really does mean optional. Optional really does mean we do not need a letter of support from your command. While that may be great for your community, and we certainly um, do expect for you to have connections with your school liaison office or with your local installation leadership, that is not required for as a indication that you will receive a DODEA award. In fact, those types of letter supports actually increases our bandwidth because our office has to answer any of those types of letters that we may receive from DoD leadership or for your congressperson for for your application. So optional really does mean that merit reviewers will not be seeing any of your letters of support or anything that is included in your appendix. So just keep that in mind. We really do want those who will be writing applications to have the bandwidth to focus on the actual writing of the components in your project narrative. Please attach your narrative in a editable Word or Adobe document along with your federal forms. Also, attach your detailed budget spreadsheet as part of that entire package submission in your grants.gov workspace. Appendix A provides you with a template of what the cover page and the project narrative should look like. Not only did JDP put it on grants.gov and Adobe, she also put it in Word so you can literally take the whole application and cut out everything but Appendix A and use it to fill in the blanks. That's what I would do. I would take the criteria, but never mind. Doesn't matter what I would do. Go ahead and make sure that you do use that in an editable format. Why JDP? Why is that important? It's important because we literally cut and paste your abstract into your terms and conditions of your grant. I'm sure you all have noticed that your abstracts are in your terms and conditions. In order for us to do that, we need to be able to have rights to edit your document. So please make sure, just from just a courtesy perspective, that your narratives are in an editable format for us. Again, be concise. I cannot stress enough, no more than 60 pages, as well as please keep a copy of any submitted documents for reference. I do understand that most project directors are not the ones that actually submit the application into grants.gov. My recommendation will be to whomever has that access to buy them cookies or cupcakes that day and sit with them to make sure that you see the transmission occur, as well as are there when the automatic email from grants.gov appears in their screen after submission. So you have a copy of that for your records. What we don't want to happen is that September the 28th is come around and you're wondering where your application is, and we can't even go back and look because it wasn't submitted. So please do that and don't lose oversight of that submission. If you got any questions after this call, or you think of something, you know how to contact us. But in case you don't, there's our contact information as well as the contact information for our eTech website. I want to take the time to thank Erlene and Nancy for allowing us the opportunity